In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
This episode is about the surprising power of failure, the freedom in financial risk, and how one woman turned a corporate setback into a mission to fund the future of women-led innovation. Caroline Lewis is our guest this week on Money Tales. Caroline was checking all the boxes for her career, climbing the corporate ladder, leading big teams at Nike, and chasing the next promotion. Then, suddenly, she was off the ladder entirely. Caroline shares the moment her fast-moving, say-it-like-it-is style clashed with corporate politics, and how that unexpected exit became the launchpad for a more purpose-driven, powerful relationship with money. Caroline is the managing partner and founder of Rogue Women. She's also a partner at Rogue Ventures and Kauffman Fellow. Before entering venture capital, she was Senior Director of Global Strategy and Operations at Nike, where she managed a portfolio of strategic programs focused on consumer experience, digitization, and big data. Her love for startups comes from her early career experience as a founder of an e-commerce business and as a leader at a consumer health product company.
Here are 3 key money topics Caroline hits on in this conversation. First, when you drive innovation and entrepreneurship, creating jobs and building wealth for others, you have the power to transform entire communities from the ground up. Second, feeling wanderlust in your 20s? Embrace it. Explore the world while you can. Yes, you might watch friends climbing career ladders while you're climbing mountains, but those experiences are priceless and you can create opportunities to financially catch up later. And third, looking for extraordinary return opportunities? Consider investing in women founders because, among other compelling factors, there aren't many others allocating capital to that space. Now it's our pleasure to bring you Caroline Lewis's Money Tales.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I am Sandy Brager. Cami, one of the things that we do all the time at Aspiriant is have intimate conversations about money with our clients. And there's one that's been coming up a lot lately, which has to do with navigating moves abroad. We work with many clients who choose to live abroad. And in today's day and age, more clients are interested in maybe doing that for some period of time. And there's lots of reasons why people move overseas. It might be a career opportunity, wanting to be closer to family, or they've married someone from a different country and they want to be on a different continent where their spouse was from, or they just want to remove themselves a little more from the daily news cycle here in the United States. Lots of reasons to move abroad. As a financial planner, it's really fun to be involved in these conversations, to understand what the motivations and goals are, and then to pair all of that with a lot of technical considerations around what's involved with moving your life and your personal finances around the globe. So if you're a United States citizen, for example, regardless of where you're earning your money, whether it's here in the US or overseas, you must pay tax on your worldwide income. And that's something that a lot of people don't know about. If you hold assets overseas and they exceed a certain amount, you need to make an annual filing. There are different considerations if you own property overseas. Sometimes that triggers a different tax filing depending upon whether that property is income producing and the type of income it's throwing off. There's a maze of considerations. Then, of course, there's what's happening in the other country. How are they recognizing you? Is there a tax treaty with the United States?
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. And How long are you going to live abroad? Do you need to worry about estate planning considerations in that foreign country? There's a lot to think about. It does get pretty complex sometimes, but it's fun complex. There's really great answers, and those answers tend to be different for different individuals and different families based upon what their initial goals are.
It's so funny. I love that you said it's fun because it feels overwhelming, but that's where the partnership must be really critical because you can help raise the questions and get to the answers so that it's not overwhelming.
That's right. We just break things down and look at different areas. We look at banking, investments, housing, healthcare, all of those things, just looking at it separately and then making it all come together.
Super fun. Let's go ahead and pivot our conversation to our guest today, Caroline Lewis. Welcome to the Money Tales podcast.
Hi, Caroline.
Thank you. Hi, so great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Let's start with your story. Please introduce yourself and share a couple major turning points that have made a lasting impact on who you are today.
My name is Caroline Lewis. I am the managing partner of Rogue Women. We are an early stage venture capital fund investing in women-led technologies across the US. I had a jungle gym type career to get where I am. A few key moments. One, I grew up on a farm in upstate New York. There's something about growing up on a farm. I remember I had to bale hay before I was allowed to go out on a date or with my friends. So you just got to get the work done before you're allowed to have fun. And I think that's really been ingrained in me in many ways. Another factor that was really key is I feel incredibly blessed, very loving parents and family and relationship, very close family, but also a mom who probably in her mid 50s after she had her first retirement, she decided to go all in on financial planning, not for other people, just her own financial planning and understand the stock market and dedicated time to it. I really benefited, although knowing when you're 12 and she's like, I'm giving you some money to put into a stock you want to pick and let's talk about it. You're like, whatever, mom, I want to do something else. But now I'm like, oh man, that was a massive benefit in life. I'm so thankful for her always having that consciousness and kind of what I would consider a more healthy relationship with money and investing.
Caroline, I just want to pause on that. There are not that many people in this world who learn financial education from their mothers. That's really special.
It was huge. Anything from the stock, dividends, 401k, Roth versus your typical investment in vehicles. I had a credit card from as early as I could remember because she was dead set on you are going to be a woman in this world. You need to build credit as soon as possible. Having a mother that went down that financial path and then really brought me along, in some ways forced me along when I was a teenager, which was really great. So hugely privileged in that sense. Some other key moments that really shaped who I am, playing a Division I sport in college too, kind of balancing both hard work with your education as well as a commitment to a team.
What'd you play?
I played field hockey. I went to Davidson College. Most people only know about it because Steph Curry went there, but small school, 1,500 students, a great liberal arts school. And then I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Quickly decided I didn't want to be a lawyer after I worked in a law office. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do with my life. So my best girlfriend was teaching English in China, and she encouraged me to consider that as an option. I ended up moving to South Korea, taught English over there, so relevant to the introduction of what do you do when you're going to go work in another country. I ended up sending everything home. I made money there, shipped everything back, and then I created a mobile teaching program where I took to multiple countries for about a year.
You did mobile teaching?
Yes, my goal originally was I'm going to tour around these countries
And make some money.
Yeah, and well, I didn't even want to make my, I just tour around. But a month in, I was like, I'm just kind of a lawyer. Like I'm just showing up these places. I want to give something of myself. And this is what I say is a pivotal moment. I realized in this time frame that wherever I am, I want to be able to use some sort of skill or value that I have to better that community or participate in that community in a positive, beneficial way. That's where at the time I was like, well, everybody, they want like an English teacher, adults, children. So I would just go up to random schools and sometimes adult learning centers, like, do you want a complimentary English teacher for a week, a month, 2 months? And I created this program that could adapt to either adult learners or really young children and go with the teacher's curriculum. So I did that for a year. Absolutely wonderful and very life-changing. I think anybody, if you have the privilege and opportunity to live in another country, it is one of the best things you possibly can do. Fast forward, I think starting my own business was pivotal and just learning all the ins and outs and ups and downs of that. I also had an opportunity to work for a woman in West Virginia where she ran 3 companies. She asked me to help her start her fourth. And I really got to see at that point that if you're part of innovation and entrepreneurship and you can build jobs and wealth for other folks, you can fundamentally change communities, however you want to define that community. So that was a big aha moment in my life.
These are amazing, Caroline.
Another key moment was when Tom Sperry, who's my founding partner at Rogue Women, we sat down and he'll tell this story where I was a consultant at the time and Nike was a big client, but I was like, well, I want to get back into startups or investing. And he said, what do you do? And I was like, well, I'm a consultant. I was talking to speaking. He's like, everybody fucking hates consultants. Just go own a P&L, go own some business and then come back and talk to me, which really pushed me. So I ended up taking a job at Nike that they were offering me, but I wasn't thinking about it because I just want to go back to startups and not do corporate. But that conversation was pretty pivotal. I did it. And then I always stayed in touch with them. And so I reached back out and I was learning about investing and looking at a bunch of deals. And he eventually asked me to come into venture capital, which of course was the foundation of building Rogue Women. So huge life-changing moment. And then of course, having my marriage to my college sweetheart and my children. And I was a little bit late stage mother. So I had children a little bit later in life. And there is something for me where it really begged the question. It was also around COVID too. So I think a lot of people are going through reflective moments, but I thought, what am I building here? What's the ultimate purpose of life? And what is the world that I'm about to leave my daughters in? And really wanted to reflect on that moment to tie in what I do on a daily basis to feeling like I am building a better world for them, even if it's a tiny drop in the ocean, and how I kind of consider that legacy.
I love the through line of connecting purpose and giving back to a community. And it sounds like the learning from your mom in particular around money was just really impactful. So I'm curious, when did you start wanting to build your, I'll call it your wealth? When did it connect with you?
I was on the path of life and not really thinking much about it all the way through college. I'm in college, I'm playing sports, I'm getting my degree in psychology. And it wasn't really until probably a little bit too late in my college pathway that I was like, oh, I need to get a job. What should I be doing in this world?
Caroline, I think this happens a lot. Absolutely.
I graduated a little bit early from college. It was late in the process. What's this liberal arts degree supposed to get me? Where am I supposed to go here? And everybody at that time was either a doctor, which they had taken the pre-med path, or they were like going into investment banking, which I had missed that boat on internships and all that. So then I was like, well, I guess I'll try being a lawyer. I can still study for the LSAT. And then work in that law office, I was like, oh, this is not what I want to do. I was just kind of a wandering person. And that's a privileged position to be in. I was supporting myself at the time, but not having massive amounts of debt that I had to be paying off at that time allowed me this privilege to figure out what I want to do, where I want to go. And I really didn't have a plan. I was just flying by the seat of my pants, making it up as I went along.
And then you flew to South Korea.
South Korea is actually a pretty good gig at the time. That was back in like 2006, 7-ish. And I made 80K and all expenses paid.
Wow, that's incredible.
It was great. And my housing was taking care of everything. So I actually made a pretty good chunk.
So you had a job when you were there. You were going to a job.
Yeah, I was teaching English. And then I was traveling all around.
I wasn't sure if maybe you were just putting up a shingle, as some people do.
No, that was later. That was the year after, but I had made some money to be able to do that. I came back to the US and it was the 2008 timeframe. Try getting a job when you're a person who's BS in psychology, liberal arts, have been overseas, and you're in West Virginia. People are like, I don't know what to do with you. We don't have jobs. It's 2008. The economy is crashing. I did a temp job. I had to go to a temp agency. They made me take the typing test. It was humbling, that's for sure. And I ended up working at that one woman's company as a receptionist. And I was like, I'm going to be the best goddamn receptionist you've ever seen.
Of course you are.
That's where money started. I was like, okay, I need money. I wasn't career focused at that point. I was just like, I got to get the money in because I got to pay for stuff.
Caroline, if we rewind the tape a little bit, you're in South Korea, you have this great paying job. You're living abroad. You talked about the importance of having that experience. I'm curious what you experienced from a money perspective then. Did you learn something about yourself and your behavior or your relationship with money when you're in South Korea? And then even extending to that year beyond when you're traveling around?
I don't know that I learned anything novel specifically with my relationship to money. I think with that experience upon reflection drove the importance and the value of how money to me is tied very much to experience and the freedom to choose the experiences and be part of experiences and communities that I want to be part of. And that's kind of more of, I think, a reflection in my 40s that I've been able to have of what is the importance of money. But at the time, I was just happy I had some money to be traveling around and doing what I want to do and live the way I wanted to live and experience things. And I did come back to the US because I was like, my money is starting to get a little short and I need to get a job. But it was very much, I need to get a job and make money. I still didn't really know what's my career, let's climb a ladder. That came a little bit later. That was after I did my MBA, after running my own company, realizing I had debt to pay off. And I was like, all right, what am I getting serious about here? And that's when I chose to go into consulting for the flexibility, but also really great paycheck and benefits. And that's when in my life, my relationship to money really changed somewhat unhealthily, I think.
Say more about that. Why unhealthily and why business school even?
So I was working for Julie and she ran 3 companies and I was helping her with her 4th and I was working all the time and it was great. But I was like, I want to build my own company. I have a liberal arts degree. I wanted to get an MBA purely just to help me start my own company. It was still early-ish. You couldn't just go on YouTube for courses. You still had to read a book about how to do accounting. I think there's a lot better tools available if you just want to start your own company these days. But it was just seemed like kind of a next interesting step. And that's why I wanted to get my MBA. I wanted to start my own business, which is what I did. And it was not high growth or anything, but it was something that I was doing on my own. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, I'm not making a lot of money. I'm now seeing all of my friends around me really start to make a lot of money because they've been in investment banking or something else for 4 or 5 years. And I'm still at the same level. Again, at the time, I was really nervous and anxious about that. And upon reflection, now I tell everybody that is the best time in your life to just do what you want to do because you're never going to get that time back. You might feel anxious if your friends are going into career and 6-figure jobs or getting close to that. But the best time to go explore is when you are young and you don't have all these responsibilities and mortgages and commitments. And so I tell people, even though it might feel unsettling, just do it. You'll catch up later. It's fine.
Caroline, were you talking with your friends about those feelings at the time?
No way. I was not talking to my friends about that. I had this great experience, which I was leaning into sharing that. But no, I mean, I was just on a very different wavelength as my friends who had gone right into investment banking and working in New York. We were just in very different scenarios. Where I believe it might have been more unhealthy is when I got into kind of the consulting mode in the career, I really was a ladder climber. I just wanted to get promoted and make as much money as fast as I possibly could. And I would do anything.
Why is that unhealthy? I just want to make sure I understand.
I think people should be passionate about money and making money and go for it. I think having too much of your identity tied towards the achievement of the next level of money, it's a cycle that if you don't get out of, there'll just never be enough.
Because there's always another peak to climb.
There's always the next rung. There's always the next thing. And I was definitely a person that, especially corporations, if you're like, here's what you need to do on your performance review to achieve a 5 and a bonus, I was like, thank you for the checklist. I will execute and we will do it. And then I will tell you why I need to be promoted. And then you'll promote me and you'll give me a bonus. Great. And so it was great, but so much of my identity at that time and my identity in relationship to my achievement and husband and like my value as a person was so much tied to getting to that next level and how much I was not just making, but the next promotion, the next thing.
What caused you to realize this and make a shift?
Going into the space I am now and having some great mentors and reflection, but there was actually a pretty pivotal moment. So I took that corporate job that Tom's very said, go own a P&L, be responsible for something. Great, I will do it. And I was at Nike and I actually drank the Nike Kool-Aid. I mean, Nike's a really cool company and brand. It is also a very large multinational corporation, which comes with the politics and all the things that large multinational corporations come with. But I was still acting the way that I normally act, which is kind of a key theme of just, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I'm going to move as fast as I want to move. But I was at a pretty significant leadership level. I ended up leaving Nike pretty unexpectedly. And it was because I pushed quite a few buttons very quickly. I still don't regret all the things I did and said and did what I did, but it was the first time that on my little ladder climbing, I will do and execute, that someone was like, boom, off the ladder. You have not adapted. And it was a slap in the face because I had always just been the person that could achieve what I wanted to achieve and do it the way I wanted to do it. And this was the first time that I went after something to achieve something I wanted to do, move fast, break the barriers a little bit. And someone was like, yeah, you're not doing this in the politically correct way within a jungle gym of a large corporation. That was a critical moment for me where, having been so tied to the next level and the next paycheck and the benefits and all of that, to completely be wiped of that was this moment of, oh my gosh, it just shook me to my core, I think in a really healthy way. Because the reality was I was in my early 30s. It's not that big of a deal in retrospect, but at the time it felt like such a big.
And you're an achiever. I think given all that you've done, I can see that shaking you to your core. It's some sort of metric, but it's a good shake in hindsight.
Kudos to Tom, my business partner. So we would meet regularly. This happened. And I had a breakfast scheduled with him a week later. And I was like, I don't want to go to this guy. I'm crying in my soup over here. My life just changed. I'm a failure. This guy's a VC. And I texted him. I was like, I think I'll take a rain check on breakfast. And he's like, no, we're meeting.
He's good.
He's very good at cutting through the crap. He knows exactly what something is. It makes him a great investor. And so I meet with him. I was like, it's good. And I always kind of had this veneer, always true in my professional, my super professional side and then my personal side. And I really never mixed them. And that was drastically changed and for the better. But he brought on my, was like, what happened? What's going on? And I was like, I'm a failure. Da, da, da. I'll always remember, he's like, I like you so much more now. I actually now want to hire you because before, the business that we're in of entrepreneurship and investing, you will never be successful unless you've failed first. And I absolutely believe that's true now. And I actually see that in other people now where I can see if they haven't had some sort of failure, big risk moment where they put themselves on the line. Honestly, they're not as interesting as a person to me. You need more depth. You need to have really put yourself out there and failed at something in life. And I want to see you come back from that because now I know that you have a new renewed strength within yourself.
Wow. Oh my gosh. It's incredible. How did the mentorship relationship with Tom start?
It started because when I was doing my startup, I also had a best girlfriend in business school who was doing her startup. He was mentoring her. She's like, oh, you should really connect with this guy. He's great at just advice and thoughts. I would always keep in touch with him. And then when I was at this moment of like, I really want to get more into, I want to give a startup one last go here. I just want to get back to startups, really no interest in venture specifically, just really startups and maybe early stage investing for myself. I reached out, I was like, okay, I want to learn everything I can from you. And so that's when our relationship took on much more of the mentorship aspect. And then when, of course, he asked me to come work at Rogue with him and Adam, that's when full apprenticeship style mentoring. It really is apprentice style industry and the ins and outs of investment. And he's very much taken me under his wing in that regard.
Caroline, how did your personal relationship with money shift as you moved into the venture world and away from this corporate experience and started to really get your hands into the meaty stuff that you wanted to work in ever since you went to business school?
The nature of how I went into venture was I went essentially to a firm that in many ways was its own startup. It was on fund two, a small fund. So it wasn't a big platform venture fund that has their HR similar to a corporation. And in addition to that, the first year into it, Tom had gone to a conference. He was like the only male panelist. And it was his aha moment of the funding towards women is really crappy. And he had two little girls, they're now grown up now. And it just was his aha moment. He wanted to take his skill set and do something to that space. He was like, Caroline, you're the strategy and execution person. Go see if there's an opportunity here, go figure it out and let us know if we should do something, which I actually resisted at first.
Why? Why'd you resist it?
I don't want to be pigeonholed into like, oh, you're the woman, go invest in women. I want to be the best at everything. I realize the fallacy in that type of thinking now and the inherent bias and kind of misogyny baked in with that type of thinking. But at the time, that's what I was thinking. But after I looked at all the data, I was like, oh, hands down, let's go. This is a massive business opportunity. And I like to make money and I like to run things and do things. So I was like, great. There's a huge opportunity to go make a shit ton of money that nobody else is playing in this space. Then I brought it to Tom and Adam, and Tom, being a great mentor, was like, great. You're going to learn how to build a firm, a fund, do it all yourself, raise money yourself. I will help you with the investing and being a good fiduciary, but this is yours. You got to do it. So I moved from a place of corporate, structured, here's the checklist. If you want to go from a 3, 4, or 5 on your performance and get your bonus and your benefits, there's always the ladder to find that you can climb, to truly an entrepreneurial role, which was always my intention. And to begin with, it was just the entrepreneurial role was building a venture firm instead of building a startup. But it was all those elements, because part of that was when Tom said, hey, I'll bring you on, he was like, I will pay you max $50K a year.
In Korea, you had all expenses paid at $80K.
At Nike, I was like, I finally had hit my top salary goals, benefits. I remember being in shock. And also, I was still so attached to titling. Based on the fact that I've led a team of 200 and managed 500 million, I think my title should be principal. And he's like, I don't really fucking care about title. They call yourself whatever you want. How about you are an analyst because you've never done this job before? And I just remember being so pissed and offended. You're discrediting all this work I've done and I'm getting paid nothing. But it was also like, do you want the opportunity or not?
I know you really wanted to do it, but when the initial compensation of the guaranteed part is that low relative to what you had been making, what caused you to dive in?
It's because by that time I'd been looking at so many companies and sharing information with them and thinking about startups. I loved it. So I kind of was just like, sure, okay, fine. I will take this and I will make it what I want it to be. But at that time, I was still very held to the titling and salary. Salary is important. You need to make money to make your world go round, but I was still very held to it from the emotional and identity perspective. And Tom definitely saw that. And I think he was trying to really shake that out of me on purpose or not, because he is an investor because he was a founder first. And he's been a founder through 3 venture-backed companies. What he was trying to make sure is that if I'm coming in as an investor and I'm coming with all this titling and I've led this big team, I will never be able to relate to the founder who literally has put everything on the line to build a company, is paying themselves nothing and still trying to make their world work. I think he was really trying to push me. If you're going to build something and you're going to be investing in founders, you have to understand what it's like to put everything on the line and build something. And you can make more money when you start making more money. I, at the time, did not appreciate that. And I also didn't really know venture capital. I now know fund economics a lot better. There's a limit to how much you can pay people on a certain size fund when you get 2%. But at the time, I just didn't have that. And I think it was really critical to my success now to have a mentor who pushed me in that way. But it was very tough to let go of that. And also, privileged position. I had a savings. I had a spouse who was working, so I could take that position. I tell my husband, thank you so much for letting me take a risk that has led me to be able to do something I love to do every single day.
What neat partnership.
It was great. Not everybody can do that. And it was a huge turning point for me.
You talk in your role as an investor in founders and businesses that are starting up. You talk about money a lot. And I'm curious, what surprises you in those conversations about money, and whether it's people's relationship with money or even knowledge around it? What are some surprises you've experienced?
I still work through what is my relationship with money. And now, having done the work of why do I want to make a lot of money? What does that actually mean? Once you get the base needs taken care of, what's the ultimate goal of making more money? Bigger house, bigger car? Where does it go? You can just keep going. What is it for? I'll circle back to my why on what it's for, but related to talking with founders. And I kind of put this in 2 buckets that are different, but correlated and have a strong relationship. I don't think founders especially think too much about it. There's the one, just the finances of your business, the money and how your business is making money. That's very fascinating. I love working with founders, especially early stage founders, through all of those elements because there's so many unknowns about your pricing and contracting. But that's how is your business going to grow and make money, which is related to what is the value of your business. So there's some standards out there that people are using. What's the value of my business based on how much revenue, et cetera, and then their own percent stake in that business. So there's just the very tactical nature of VC to walk through and talk through those elements. What I think is interesting, any founder who's met with me knows, I ask two questions near the end of every conversation, which is in 5 years, oftentimes they've been building their business for 7 years. How do you define success of the business? So I'm looking for your metrics, what you think you're going to be executing. Maybe you're doing an M&A. What's your vision of that? And I always ask in 5 years, what is success for you as a whole person? What I'm trying to see is what is that relationship, which their business is so much of them. They're the majority stakeholder still in 5 years usually. And there's a value attached to that business. And there's a value that people may be wanting to pay or not pay. And there's also how do they define success for themselves as a whole person, which there's many elements of that. But one of the elements is going to be financial success. And I really want to understand how someone is thinking about those two really big chunks of their life together, because I think it makes them more grounded as they have to make decisions throughout the business life cycle, not on the everyday, but the bigger decisions about where their business goes or their partnerships or potential acquirers. I think it makes them more grounded in that decision making because they have a clearer picture of what is it that they actually want. Is it legacy and impact and a big chunk of money? Is it none of that? It's just time with family. I just want them to have thought through that. And I think it's really important. So that is to me one of probably the most important things for me to understand about a founder when I invest in them, because it also tells me so much about their intrinsic motivation. As a person who's been on the ladder, there's always going to be something more to accomplish and do. So if it's not anchored in why, for what, then I think you kind of get lost in just the climbing and you're not anchored and grounded.
Caroline, I have to ask you, what is your why at this point in your career?
I am very clear. And of course, it can always evolve and change, but especially after having my two daughters, I want to raise two incredible human beings. As part of that, money is really important to me as a facility to give them all the opportunities that I was afforded in my lifetime through the hard work that my parents did and my grandparents have done, and afford them even more opportunities. In addition, I fundamentally believe that the world will be a better place if we have more women in power. And money is power in our society. It is the capital on which all of the relationships, and you look at our current power situation in the US, money was a key driver to that. Venture capital is not the only way for people to make big money, but it is one of the few ways in the US where you fundamentally can go from one socioeconomic class to a stratosphere of a different socioeconomic class that fundamentally influences decision makers and power makers in our society. And so I wake up wanting to raise two incredible human beings, and I just want to get more money in the hands of women. Women business owners have the ability to multiply that monetary power effect 10, 20, 30 fold. And my goal is to both be part of the journey for people who are going to mint multiple millions, if not billions, that can change the world, and also reward my investors and those people who believe in the power of women in this society with really big returns so I can keep doing this work and keep putting money to where people who are going to be more aligned with my values and vision for the world can be really influential. And I believe by doing that I will make the world just ever so slightly better for my girls than it was for me from all the work that my mother did. That's why I wake up every day. And that's why I want to make a shit ton of money.
Caroline, you are a legacy builder. Tell us, what's your next money conversation going to be and who's it going to be with?
My husband, we actually have really good, healthy, dynamic conversations. My husband and I got a financial planner. It has been great. So we're on a really good path. It's also something we offer every one of our founders is financial planning as part of our investment. They get to choose who they want to do that with, but we'll pay for it. We just think it's so fundamentally important.
Cheers to you.
And then with my mom, my father unfortunately passed away about 2 years rather unexpectedly. And Thank God my mom has been so financially competent and understanding and running of the house as she was, because it's made this transition much easier. But it's really working with her through how do we start thinking about her estate and planning and making different moves and thinking about the whole family as part of that process. Those are the real money conversations I'm actively having in my life, both in my own personal life with my husband, but then on a broader spectrum of what does financial planning look like for the next generation.
I love that it went full circle too, that you're having money conversations with your mom and from a different perspective, but what a great partnership.
Yeah, thank God, Mom. Thank you.
Well done, Mom. Caroline, where's the best place for our listeners to find you?
The best place to find me is LinkedIn, Caroline J. Lewis and Rogue Women. Also, we have our website, roguewomen.com. It's WMN.com. If you are pitching a company, we actually have a process. You just submit the form and go. But if you just want to reach out and connect, just Caroline at roguevp.com. I love to connect with folks.
What a beautiful passion you have. Beautiful story. Thanks for sharing it all with us on Money Tales.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening. And leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspirient. Go to aspirient.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspirient.com. See you next time.